KHOU 11 Sports Extra, sponsored by Xfinity.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's another Sunday without sports, but another Sunday with lots of sports to talk about. Thanks for staying up late with us. I'm Jason Bristol. Let's start with our question of the night. If NFL games started tomorrow, which team will have a better season, Cowboys or Texans? Hit up KHOU.com/vote now or that KHOU 11 app and be a part of the show. And kicking off the show, conversation time with Matt Musil and Daniel Gotera. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to get my next haircut, but I think we're all in that same boat right now.
Yes, and of course, we're all a safe distance away here in the Great Day Houston studio. Our special guest believes Bill O'Brien could already be the worst general manager ever. Yes, it's from a piece appearing earlier this week in The Athletic. It is Ross Tucker, former NFL lineman and host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Hey, Ross, since that article has come out, has anyone changed your mind that OB may not be the worst GM ever?
Not really. It seems like, especially the folks I've heard from in Houston, almost all unanimously agree. There might have been one or two people that disputed my claim, but all the other Houstonians seem to think that those were Bill O'Brien burner accounts on Twitter. So it's kind of funny. I've actually gotten lengthy emails from people that have gone ahead and given me even further evidence in their mind as to the struggles that O'Brien's had in the 9 months since he's been the general manager, ever since they fired Brian Gaines, surprisingly, last June.
Hey, Ross, I want to ask you this because Bill O'Brien, in this roundtable discussion that they had, the latter part of last week, he said, look, I don't want to win the month of March. I want to win the month of January, which I totally agree with. But do you think this team will be in the playoffs in January to win the month of January?
No, I don't. Now, in fairness to Bill, I think he's actually a pretty good coach. And he's had some success over the last 4 or 5 years. You know, they've had some playoff berths. They were able to win that game against Buffalo this year. I just think he's terrible on the front office part of things, and unfortunately, I think it's going to manifest itself this year. I mean, first of all, I'm not sure Laramie Tunsil is going to play it down until he's the highest-paid offensive lineman in NFL history. I don't think if I was Deshaun Watson that I would play it down until I was the highest-paid player in NFL history, especially when you do what they did and move on from DeAndre Hopkins. I just think he is a difference-making player. To not have him, I think my guess is they'll fall behind the Titans and the Colts in the AFC South.
You know, Ross, a lot of people that you talk to sometimes, they'll say that, trading Hopkins, if you got the right deal, it wasn't the craziest decision to make. But do you really believe that there's not one team out there that would not have given a first-round pick, given the fact that, hey, he still had 3 years on his contract? At least leave him on the bench. If he's not going to be happy, you can just sit on the bench. Is there not a team out there that would have at least given this Texans squad a first-round pick for Hopkins?
Well, so what's really crazy about it, right, is they didn't even really get a second-round pick. And I know that that's what they got in terms of the draft pick compensation, but they took on David Johnson's contract, and he's a guy that's done nothing the last couple of years. He's due over $10 million this year. That's guaranteed. He already has over $2 million guaranteed for next year. And the other thing that's crazy, guys, is his skill set really overlaps with Duke Johnson, if anything. So if you picture them taking on a contract that nobody else really wanted to take on, they didn't even get a second-round pick. I mean, it's really, depending on how you value Johnson and that albatross of a contract, it's really a third, fourth, fifth, sixth-round pick. Now, they did have discussions with other teams. They obviously value Johnson a lot higher than everybody else does. But when you look at what the Buffalo Bills gave up for Stephon Diggs and you compare it to DeAndre Hopkins, there really is no comparison. It makes it look like what it is, which is one of the worst trades in NFL history.
Do you think that Bill made it personal, that it was more than just finances? That's the reason why DeAndre Hopkins is gone?
Yeah, I mean, look, he said publicly that DeAndre Hopkins wanted a raise. I mean, I got news for you guys. Everybody wants a raise. You know what I mean? Like every guy wants more money. And when you're DeAndre Hopkins and you see Julio Jones is making $22 million a year and Amari Cooper's $20 million a year, you want more money as well. But part of being a coach and a GM, for that matter, in the league is managing those situations. And I think based on his experience with Jadeveon Clowney, I just think Bill O'Brien didn't want to have to deal with that again. I don't think he wanted to deal with an extended contract squabble or any potential holdout, and he elected to move on from him for peanuts.
But that's part of being a general manager, right? Hey, Ross, I want to ask you a big picture of the NFL question, because they're limited in their scouting going into this draft, limited in getting interviews for free agents. Who does that favor? Do we just assume that it favors the New England Patriots over all the other teams? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it favors the teams that get as far ahead as they can on certain draft classes. And I do know that that's the way the Patriots are. You know, I've been told that by March, their scouts are working on the next year's draft class anyway, that they're not even involved in this year's part of the process anymore. They've moved on to the next year. So that's one thing that those teams that have good scouts rely on them, and you can always say that, but there are other teams that put a lot of stock into the coaching aspect of the draft process, and you get to March and the pro days and the coaches get involved. Well, those guys are going to get a lot less information now than they otherwise would have. So the teams that have better scouts and get more of the information earlier as opposed to waiting later on in the process are the better ones.
Ross, do you think this Texans team right now can make the playoffs? It's an easy question. What's the ceiling for this Texans group right now?
They absolutely can make the playoffs, you know, especially now that there's an extra playoff team in each conference. It makes it actually a lot more likely that the Texans would make the playoffs. I have so much faith in Deshaun Watson. I just think he is an incredible football player. And so really just because of Deshaun Watson, they've got a chance to win 8, 9 games, maybe even 10, and make the playoffs. But I can't see them winning many more than 10 games, and I'd be surprised to watch them win a playoff game in January again.
All right, let's go around the room here quickly. Ross, season starts tomorrow. Which team has a better season? Is it Dallas or the Texans?
I'll go with the Cowboys. I think it's probably close, but I'll go with the Cowboys. You know, the injection of the new head coach there and Mike McCarthy. I'll say that Cowboys can get to 10, maybe 11 wins. I don't think the Texans get there.
I'd like to say it was Houston, but I'm going to go with Ross. I believe it's the Cowboys also. Like Ross says, I think it'll be close, but I've got to go Dallas.
Yeah, I'm going to go Cowboys too, although I have a lot of faith in Deshaun Watson like you, Ross. I got it right now. We'll see how some of the development goes through with some of these players, the draft picks, see how these players fit in with the schemes. But right now, I'm going with Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going with Cowboys as well. So clean sweep.
So
Ross
we're not
Tucker,
very popular now.
Yeah. Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You can also follow him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime. Stay safe.
You as well.
Thanks, Ross.
Houston has lost another former head coach of the Oilers. This time it's Ed Biles, who died of leukemia. His best season as head coach, 1981, finishing 7-9 with Ken Stabler as the quarterback of the Oilers. Before that, Ed Biles coached defense under Bum Phillips, as Elvin Bethea recently told us.
Eddie was my coach, defensive line coach, and he was defensive coordinator. But Eddie, I got to give it to him. Eddie got it out of what he wanted, we gave him. And those years, I think 75, 76, we were 75, 76, 77, and 78. We had the best defense.
Yeah, it was a great defense. Matt, you knew Ed Biles the best. What did you think of first after hearing the news of his death?
Well, I was sad because he's a friend of mine and always ready to support my foundation through the golf tournament. Eddie was such a fun guy to be around. You know, he'll be remembered as the guy who followed the legend Bum Phillips as head coach of the Oilers and didn't have a lot of success. But Here's the thing he needs to be remembered for. Remember, I did this story about a year ago, how he was the first Division I football coach at Xavier University in Cincinnati who had the first starting black quarterback in college football in Division I. That was a big deal. Eddie deserves a lot of credit for that. He was a really good football coach, great defensive-minded coach, and just a great guy. And I know the people out in Missouri City, out at Quail Valley, all his buddies out there will miss him. But Eddie Biles, just a great guy.
And one thing that I still have, Matt, is the business card that Ed Biles gave me. He always he wanted to talk football all the time, right? And
Yes.
He was just so welcoming about wanting to talk about football and all the experiences he had. So certainly Ed Biles will be missed. Ed Biles, a member of the Houston Oilers organization for nearly 10 years, dead at the age of 88. Major League Rugby was just 5 matches into its season when it was canceled, and the man leading the Houston SaberCats, well, how's he dealing with no sport and no practice time? Now on Sports Extra, it is Sam Windsor from the Houston SaberCats. Hello, mate. You there?
Jason, how are you, mate?
Good, good. I like to say hello, mate, and I can do that with Sam. Sam, with rugby being such a physical sport, what are you doing to stay in shape?
I'm trying a few different things. We've got a little patio in our apartment, so the wife and I are doing our best to get through some workouts that challenge us mentally and physically, emotionally too, I guess. But just trying to get out every day and get the heart rate up and trying to stay active. Our strength and conditioning.
Hey, Sam, I got to ask you this. One of your goals is to play for Team USA at the America's Rugby Championship, which will be held later this summer, hopefully. Now, is this layoff going to help or hurt your chances with that?
I think it will. So they won't make a call on the ARC until probably a month or two's time. So I've got a plan as if it's going to go ahead. And then if it does, then hopefully I'll put myself in a good position to get selected and make the roster and make the squad and try and get capped for the USA.
That'd be cool.
Well, in addition to staying active and being physically fit, there's a lot of people still playing video games, and they're getting really good at it. SaberCats playing a virtual rugby type game, video game on Twitch. Are you guys doing damage in that particular arena?
Yeah, so Tian Lutz was one of our centers, and he's quite a force to be reckoned with on the field, and turns out he's a decent force on the couch as well. So he had to sit out a couple of games. He was busy, so we brought in some substitutes. So we were looking pretty good early on, but we finished 2-3, and I think we're in a playoff match against Toronto on Tuesday or Wednesday this week to try and win the Cup division. So about a third division playoff spot for us. Good fun.
Is it still a keg party afterwards, just like the matches in person, or how do you do a virtual keg party?
I actually saw one of my club teams from back in Australia were meant to play their first round of club competition on Saturday, just gone, and that couldn't happen. So instead, they had a boat race after it, where 5 players from each team, try and finish a pint as fast as they can, and they did that via Zoom. So they didn't play the match, but they managed to have the fun afterwards, which is always in the spirit of rugby, which is good to see.
That is excellent. All right, so the rugby gaming also a benefit for Feeding America, the organization, so good work on that. Sam, thanks for calling in, and as always, I imagine we'll talk to you down the line.
Yeah, guys, stay healthy, stay safe, stay home, and all the love to everyone out in Houston and SaberCats fans. Thanks, guys.
Did you know the Oilers once threatened to shut down the NFL draft? It is a strange but true Houston sports story. The year 1985. The lowly Oilers have the second pick in the draft, behind Buffalo, which early on decides to select Bruce Smith. But there's a wild card out there. Another prospect some teams badly want, a quarterback from the University of Miami named Bernie Kosar. The Oilers don't need a quarterback, but the Vikings, picking third, do. Houston and Minnesota agree to switch places. The Oilers also add a second-round pick in the trade, but only if the Vikings can persuade Kosar to enter the draft. You see, back in 1985, college players could not leave early for the NFL unless they graduated college early, which Kosar was about to do. Kosar, though, learned of another option: graduate early then wait a bit to turn pro, and he'd enter a special supplemental draft in which the Cleveland Browns, this Ohio boy's preferred destination, had secured the #1 pick. NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle allowed Kosar to choose his draft, and Bernie Kosar, no surprise, picked the supplemental one. The Oilers were furious. They wanted that extra draft pick. They threatened to sue Rozelle and the NFL, hoping to stop the April draft so a judge could determine Kosar's fate. But the day before the draft, the Oilers backed down because the Vikings would not be a part of their lawsuit. And that's how the Houston Oilers once threatened to shut down the NFL draft. A strange but true Houston sports story. And that 1985 draft, the Oilers chose Ray Childress, who turned out to be a fairly good player. I mean, the guy was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
The Vikings ended up trading the second pick to Atlanta, which the Falcons then used on Bill Fralick. Each of these first 5 picks all played in the Pro Bowl, so it seemed to work out for everyone. And Bernie Kosar, of course, lasted 9 years in Cleveland. Matt, you were covering the Oilers back then. Does this bring back any memories, especially when Childress is drafted?
Well, Ladd Herzig was the GM, and of course, there are a lot of things happened under his watch.
Yeah.
The infamous mooning situation with a wedding party up in Buffalo that time. But this draft in particular, I didn't know it was so close to being totally held up. Ray Childress was a standout at Texas A&M. A lot of us expected great things from him. The surprise of that draft for me was Richard Johnson, a cornerback that they drafted that year. Jerry Glanville was a bump and run type of defensive coordinator. As a D coordinator, he wanted man-to-man coverage a lot, and Richard Johnson never played man-to-man his life, but he was not a cover corner. That was the biggest surprise of me in 1985. Also in that draft, remember the name Mike Golick? The guy on ESPN as a talk show? The Oilers drafted him that year, and Jerry Rice was in that draft. The Oilers did not draft him. But Steve Tasker, was Steve Tasker like the best special teams player ever in NFL history? At least one of them. He was taken in that draft. They really drafted some good players in 1985, no doubt about that. But I did not know how close it was to shutting down the draft.
Yeah, that was something. But that 85 draft was certainly one for the books. And comedian Chinedu is catching up on some of the Houston sports news he missed. So what could he say to James Harden then? And staying at home is allowing comedian Chinedu to catch up on some of the sports news he missed, like James Harden becoming a part owner of the Dynamo.
Congratulations are in order for James Harden, as he is now part owner of the Houston Dynamo. When you own part of a soccer team, that's when you know you got money. Plus, I'm a big Dynamo fan. So I called up James. I was like, hey, James. He was like, hey, what? I was like, I want to be part of the Dynamo too. Maybe not like an owner because I got money like that, but I want to be a player. He was like, fine, you're a player now. So I got the coaching staff and we discussed what positions I should not be playing. We started with defender, fullback, goalkeeper, timekeeper, pretty much the whole gambit. Yeah, pretty much. Because the only way I can bring a W to the team is if I stop by Whataburger to bring lunch. That's the only way I'm gonna do it, okay? So I'm gonna rock the bench for now. Congrats to James, and my only concern is that him being a basketball player who owns a soccer team and is also a big-time football fan too, I'm afraid that his wires might get crossed on that field. Harden in position to kick the goal. He gets the ball. He shoots a 3 and wins the game. Touchdown! Do I get all 3 MVPs?
Wrapping up the question of the night, which team will have a better season? 60% of you saying the Cowboys. And one more thing, UH guard Nate Hinton is entering the NBA draft, but he will keep his college eligibility. And our last piece of video, the most popular city hoops around Houston, now without rim.
Xfinity Mobile, a different kind of wireless network designed to save you money.